Merry meet Annie here. What do you name the full moon in November? It's been through a lot of names in the time I've been celebrating it. In the first decade of my practice, it was the morning moon, M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G, because that's what my tradition called it. The alignment didn't always seem appropriate to me, being after Samhain. Didn't seem like a time of mourning for me. When I became priestess to that circle, I renamed it to the Moon of Remembrance. A chance to honor what we were still remembering that had to do with the ancestors and those who came before and what our experience of our Samhain rite might have been. In the second coven, in the second decade of my life, it was called the Snow Moon for at least a while. For that is what that tradition declared it to be. Well, I think we took that from the Native American tradition, which didn't quite align to the season where we lived, because snow doesn't arrive here till late in the month. When I became priestess to that circle, I renamed it to the Frost Moon. That name definitely came from a Native American tradition. In my third coven, in the third decade of my life, it was called the Beaver Moon, which was also a Native American name, and I think it was taken from that because our priestess actually had native blood, and she grew up with it being called that. Now that made sense, as it's the time to be as the beaver, preparing for the dark and cold months to come. But living in a metropolitan area, we had no genuine relationship to the beaver. And when I became priestess to that circle, I suggested it be renamed to the Moon of Preparation, which it was for a bit, and then we decided together to change it to the Moon of Hibernation. All those names for one moon, capturing 3 beautiful decade-long experiences, brothers and sisters in coven. Well, in my solitary practice, very early on, I named it the Moon of Return. Return is such a powerful exploration at this time of the year. I was first inspired by the migration of birds, especially the Canada and snow geese. It was also named Return, in my naming of it, to honor that it's the time of the year to return home, to return to reflection and contemplation, and the time of year, in essence, to return to ourselves. In the season of no frills, we see purely and clearly the most basic and enduring aspects of what surrounds us, who we are and who we are becoming. My rituals over the years have focused on all of those things. For the last 10 years or so, they've focused on, I'll just call it a sacred party that I throw for myself. Make that all of myself. It is a time to bring together all the parts of me that have been and are. And if the moon inspires it to be so, to gain a sense of, my future self or future selves. I like to invite different aspects of myself to my moon of return each year. All those aspects of gods and goddesses that I have previously blogged about are my inspiration. I spend time with those lists as I prepare my rite, and I pick 3 aspects that seem to be calling to me from me. There's something for me to learn about myself from every one of the aspects I invite to the full moon of return. And there's also a moment when all 3 of them align into a vision I can then take with me until the next full moon. Have you ever thrown a party for all of yourselves? Yeah, that's what this is. It's like gathering a circle of all yourselves around yourselves, looking around the circle into all of your eyes. We don't stop being one aspect of ourselves in order to become another. We are filled with all of ourselves the length of our lives. And the very best thing about that is that we remain connected to the wisdom of each of those selves. Annie, who you might consider to be a crone at this point in her life, might sit in her full moon circle with Annie the child, or Annie the visionary, or any number of Annies. or Warrior Annie and Creatrix Annie, and well, who knows how many other Annies might be part of the circle, each one with a story to tell and wisdom to share. The moon of return brings us back to ourselves, every one of ourselves. It illuminates all of our self nooks and crannies, and it makes it clear what of us needs to journey with us for a while. If you consider a celebration like this for yourself, for this full moon and any time in this season of Samhain most especially, may I suggest an ending to it for you? When you've spent time with yourselves that you've invited, pay attention to which one seems to be most deeply in attendance. Then let the others fade and spend more time with the one that remains. That aspect of you has something to teach you. It's more than likely something you already know. You've known it all along, but you've forgotten it, at least for a time. From writer Madeline L'Engle. The great thing about getting older is that you don't lose all the other ages you have been. This experience is for real, my friends, especially if you take it on as a sacred and magical working during the moon of return. I can give you an example from my 40-year-old self at a time when I was, well, I have to admit, I was near to giving up. It was Child Annie who showed up at the moon of return and taught me how to laugh again. You see, it wasn't as if I didn't know how. I'd just forgotten. I'd actually forgotten there were things to laugh about. Child Annie hadn't. May I suggest you invite yourselves, all of yourselves, to join in this full moon of return and discover which one of them is waiting to teach you something that you already know. I wish you all mirth and reverence in the season of Samhain. Merry part.